Welcome in for a fun episode we have centered around. It's very similar to last week, guys. We're doing a startup mock 2-round, very similar. Austin and I will go back and forth and picking each of the players of the first 2 rounds of a startup mock done now. Hello, good morning to everyone waking up early. Well, you guys won't be getting this until Thursday. So, yeah, it's another early morning for Austin and I. We're recording, doing our startup mock. This time my mic will be working, ensured of that. And this is going to be a fun one, Austin, because, again, just like with the rookie mock, we're going to see some risers and fallers. It'll be interesting to see who our biggest risers and fallers are this time around. With the Startup 101 here, I am going to take none other than the Josh Allen. I think this hasn't changed for me, compared to any of the other assets that are still on the board. Josh Allen can be the QB1 at any time, and the age doesn't scare me off in any way. Him being leave 28 or 29. So, I'm gonna stick with Josh Allen at the 101 and startups at this point. And I should say this is Superflex and tight end premium. 0.5.
Yeah, did we establish that we want to call this a 4 or 6 point touchdown? Pass touchdown.
Let's go 4 point.
Okay. Yeah. I think at this point you've got, what is this, 5 going into this year, 5 consecutive top 2 finishes for Josh Allen. I think he's such a safe pick, but also a high ceiling pick. I think at this point,
yeah,
he's the guy that should be 101, and he's the QB9 so far this year. But that's with having a bye week last week, which affects it a little bit. He's right there in the top 5. So yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go ahead and take, with the second pick, I'll take Lamar Jackson. I know he's been hurt, most of the season so far, but the little bit that we've seen from him looks like he's picked up where he left off last year. And seems like he's going to be back this week, and I don't have much concern for him going forward. They're also the team's 1-5, so I think they're going to need him to really reach another gear to make the playoffs. So I think we could see kind of like what we saw second half from Joe Burrow last year, where he just puts the team on his back to try to make a playoff push. So I still think Lamar Jackson is still in that top tier, and I think it's a tier of 2 now at the top. To me, once you pick Allen, I'm taking Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Jaden Daniels was kind of right in the top 3 preseason, and it's been kind of a little bit of a rough start for him. I mean, he's still put up the points. He had the injury, but I don't feel as safe of an option with Jaden Daniels as I do with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's why with this pick, I'm going to go ahead and pivot a little bit, and I'm actually going to go Ja'Marr Chase here. I think Ja'Marr Chase, people can make an argument that him or Puka is the wide receiver 1 at this point, but I think you have the Triple Crown winner from last year, and he proved with Joe Flacco this last week that he can still have a safe floor with a quarterback that can feed him the ball. So, and that's, again, looking on a 1-season basis versus, still career long wise. I'm really feeling confident in Ja'Marr Chase with Joe Burrow returning back at the end of the season or into next season. So as the wide receiver 1, I'll take Ja'Marr Chase right there.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think you can make it a decent argument. He's wide receiver 1 rest of season after what we saw last week with Joe Flacco. And we obviously know he can go to another level with Joe Burrow. So Ja'Marr Chase, I think, is still clearly the wide receiver 1 for me. There's a couple quarterbacks I probably would have taken ahead of him still
wide receiver 4, though, with with what the quarterback play that
But
they
yeah,
had in
exactly.
Jake Browning.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm going to take. It's interesting because we don't have a lot of ADP to go off of here because there's not a lot of startups happening right now. So it's kind of interesting. There's just so many different ways you can go, and you don't know what other people are going to do. So this is a fun exercise. But I'm going to take. I'm going to take the best player of our generation. I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes right here. I think that Patrick
I love it.
has. I mean, he's been the quarterback one so far this year. We've seen him consistently putting up. I mean, he now has 4 straight weeks of 26 points or more. In 4-point pass touchdown, and he's got 4 rushing touchdowns. He's only had 1 week with his number 1 receiver, and he played 3 quarters last week and still was QB 3 or 4 on the week. So to me, Mahomes is the only concern with him was that his passing volume wasn't going to be there, that his counting stats weren't going to be there. He's going to be there. I think he's going to be playing until he's 40. So I'm not concerned about the age. I think he's reestablished himself as a top 5 dynasty QB. And to me, when you're talking about some of these other guys with a really small sample size, like Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I just think that Patrick Mahomes is a sure bet, and right now he's putting up more points than them. So that's where I'm going, 104.
Yeah. Oh, and I can't knock that pick, Austin. Patrick Mahomes delivers. And we play, as many fantasy outlets say, like we play fantasy in 3-year windows. And so I'm not really worried about a 29 or 30-year-old Patrick Mahomes still putting up points for me in 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. So this one has moved up the board quite a bit for me. And I think, prior to the injury, a week ago or so, there was a strong argument that Puka Nacua was going to end up the wide receiver 1 on the season based on projections of where his season was going. But of course, we had the injury last week, and then he is still dealing with that. So looks like he will return after the week 8 bye based off of some reports, as you can see right here. That's the hope. But Puka Nacua is just the reception king in Los Angeles when he's healthy, when he's on the field. That is a big question mark that we've dealt with for a couple of years. But when he's on the field, to me, he is the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 of Dynasty. I think there's definitely some names that we're going to talk about after this, but the guy just puts up points and has right now a great connection with Matthew Stafford, who has been balling out this season. And of course, Devontae Adams was the beneficiary of that last week. But yeah, I mean, Puka Nacua is just a safe option right now. And, I think that even in the future, Sean McVay is going to still prioritize Puka Nacua when the quarterback change potentially happens, whether it's a rookie or possibly another veteran coming in. But I think Nacua is, to me, still a safe bet as the wide receiver 1 of that team.
Yeah, I mean, Puka, it's hard to argue with his consistency. And to me, the injury doesn't matter that much. It's a 1-week blip. I think when we look back at this season, we'll forget he even missed a game. He's missed games in every season he's been in so far. So I think at this point, if he's back next week, that's not really going to be that much of a factor. I still have him as my wide receiver 4. I think that I would rather have Lamb, Jefferson, and Chase than him, but he's right there with them, and I can't fault you taking him right there. So, but I'm gonna stick with quarterback here. I'm gonna go with Drake May. I think for me, he's leaped over Jaden Daniels for me as far as guys I want for my dynasty team long term. I have concerns about Jaden Daniels' long term, durability. He's had a lot of injuries this year, and leg injuries that are going to affect his running upside. I mean, Drake May has shown us a lot of rushing upside as well, but he's not relying on it. And some of those deep ball throws he's making this year are unbelievable. I got to think he's top 2 or 3 in MVP consideration right now. And this upcoming schedule for Drake May is very light. I mean, they got Cleveland, Atlanta, Tampa. then the Jets, the Bengals, the Giants, and then he has the Jets in Miami at the end of the year after playing Buffalo and Baltimore. So the rest of the season, I think you're going to see Drake May really ascend, and by the end of the year, be a consensus top 5 pick in startups next year. So I really like what we've seen from him. I think he's taken a bigger leap than we could have even asked for here in year 2. And
Yeah,
I've moved him above Jaden
definitely.
Daniels.
So I went and looked at Keep Trade Cut. Currently, they have Jaden Daniels as the overall asset number 6 on their list in their rankings right now. Drake May at 13th.
Yeah.
Difference of QB3 and QB4. I think if you can tear down from Jaden Daniels, I don't think the owner is going to give you anything on top at this point.
Yeah.
But if you could get somebody to give you something, even just a third, I would take that for Drake May right now, because I agree. I'm right on that same level with him.
Yeah, I mean, and based on the way Keep Trade Cut has them ranked, you could potentially get Patrick Mahomes in a first for Jaden Daniels, and I would do that easily too.
Yeah. I mean, it's especially like if you're in, and ages. I honestly have been kind of like living in this camp for a little while, but age is overrated. That like people put a lot more stock into age than really what needs to be. Like it's something to factor, but like if you're basing all of your decision making off of how old the player is, you're going to miss out on a lot of the top guys already that we've taken so far on the board. And so, you just really would need to factor a lot of other things in.
And the thing with Mahomes is he's going to have a job in the NFL until he doesn't want one at this point, So I think he'll be here for another decade.
We're acting like these guys are ancient. He's 30. So he's got, like you said, a lot of these quarterbacks, especially pocket passers that, he scrambles a little bit, but he's probably going to play until he's 40 at least.
Yeah.
So I am taking Jaden Daniels here. And I think this is exactly where I want to take him, as the QB4, not above Drake May, not right with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. But again, he's had this healthy regression back, and honestly is a time where you could probably attain some Jaden Daniels, whereas before people felt like he was untouchable. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. But yeah, to fall to the 107, that's really probably a good thing for his dynasty value. And again, to allow people to kind of buy the dip a little bit, if you really do believe that he can kind of come back this season and also be supported in Washington. But we've seen him, maintain mid to low end QB1 numbers when he is playing. The reason why he's QB20 right now in sleeper is because he missed 2 games. So, I think I posted something in the Discord that was like his numbers between him and Caleb, who we'll talk about later. But in points per game, he's still averaging around 20 points a game. And that's something I want out of my QB1 spot. So at QB4, I'll still feel safe with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, in this mock, he actually he's QB5 because I took Mahomes, which is a little higher than consensus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a great spot for him. I think that you're getting pretty good value here. As much as I kind of knocked on him in the last couple segments, I think he's still a great dynasty asset. It doesn't seem, at least at the time of this recording, there hasn't been reports that it's going to be a long-term injury, maybe a couple of weeks. So it's just the consistency of a couple things back to back. Already, people are starting to talk about, is he following the RG3 career trajectory? I think it's a little premature for that, but there is definitely some concern out there of like, his long-term durability, whether he's going to be able to keep taking the hits he took, in college and as a rookie. There was concern about that going into the season, and now we've seen him take some hard hits, and it's changed things. So to me, there's a couple different ways I could go here. I do think there's one quarterback left in the top tier here, but I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna take the player that I think is the furthest ahead of everyone else at this position, and that is Bijan Robinson. So to me, I updated my startup ranks, and I have Bijan as my highest ranked non-quarterback at this point. I think that he is just kind of really separated himself as far as workload, consistency. He's basically a 23-year-old Christian McCaffrey at this point. And so to me, the way that he's putting up stats, the way that he's getting a workload, the way that he's being treated by his team, they're treating him like, what was it? His coach said he thinks he's the best player in the league. I think that at this point, Bijan is putting up numbers with any of those elite running backs, those older guys, but he's only 20, just turned 23 years old. And I think that he's just so, when you look at the running back landscape, it's a lot of older guys that are producing now, or young guys that have a lot of potential but haven't done much. And Bijan Robinson is a young guy that's producing at the top level. And so to me, when you're looking at picking at this point in the startup, and the very top elite quarterbacks are gone and two of the top wide receivers are gone, you're looking at how can I get an advantage over everyone else. And to me, being able to get a guy like Bijan to anchor your running back room for at least the next 5 years, I think gives you an advantage where you're not playing catch up at the other positions. Well, you're already going to be playing catch up at the other positions, guys, compared to Lamar or Josh Allen. So why not go ahead and get that edge at running back? And that's where I go with Bijan here.
Yeah, that was used to night me. That was going to be my next pick, but you made my decision easier out of the two players that I was going back and forth between, and that is Bijan Robinson and then Justin Jefferson here at the 109. So Justin Jefferson, as we have kind of seen this season, has dealt with kind of some turmoil in the level of the offense this year. Of course, going from J.J. McCarthy to Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz is still starting, I think, another week. They're just letting J.J. kind of heal, get the ankle right. I think it definitely dipped Justin Jefferson from where we were seeing him, because kind of in the offseason, he was going around as high as the 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 region, but he's now kind of fallen in our mock to the 109. And, he's about it again, another as safe as wide receiver as you can get in that top tier, outside of Jahmyr, Puka, CeeDee Lamb. And he is going to eventually get it figured out with the offense. That the quarterback situation will figure itself out with J.J. McCarthy getting healthy, and then, of course, him getting more game reps. But Justin Jefferson is the weapon on the field for the Vikings, and you can even see it when it's Carson Wentz on the field. I mean, he was getting, you could see these last 3 games, 11 targets, 10 targets. He's on the field for, 100% of snaps, 99% of snaps the last game. So I think Justin Jefferson is somebody that, again, is the buying window is open right now if you are looking for a top tier wide receiver at a discounted price, right? I don't think that you are still paying anything less than 3 firsts, but maybe you could convince somebody. I mean, I think, what was it? Dalton sent us a trade that was like, it was Luke Burden and 2 firsts, Justin Jefferson. I was like, you got him somebody got him cheap. That is ridiculous. But yeah, he's got a floor, right, that he's at least providing right now. In the meantime, and I do think he's still a top dynasty wide receiver.
Yeah, ultimately, I know there's been questions about the quarterback play, and I think they're legitimate. But ultimately, I think talent's going to win out. And when you're looking at dynasty from a wide perspective, and Justin Jefferson is arguably the most talented wide receiver in the league. And I think that whether the J.J. McCarthy experiment works or not, at some point they're gonna get him a quarterback. Either J.J. will figure it out, or they'll get somebody else in there that'll get him the ball, because Jefferson is the cornerstone of their franchise. And so I obviously I think there's a little bit of like, okay, some of these questions maybe are what keep him from being the wide receiver 1 overall, but I still think he's clearly in the top 3 or 4 tier.
Yeah.
I actually think this is really good value here at the 110. It's kind of a boring pick, but he just produces year in and year out, and that's Jalen Hurts. Um, I think that he's closer to me to the top guys than really anyone else is to him. I think he's the kind of the last of this tier, especially if you're talking about a 4-point pass touchdown. He puts up a lot of those rushing touchdowns. It's kind of similar to what we've talked about with Justin Fields, whereas even if you have questions about how good of an NFL quarterback he is consistently a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Um, but the difference with him and Fields is he's not getting benched anytime soon. Jalen Hurts has won a Super Bowl with his team. He's locked up long term. And we've seen flashes of some elite arm talent. There were a lot of questions about that going into the last few weeks. It's like, man, he seems to really be struggling as a passer, but then he goes out and puts up 19 for 23, 326 yards and 3 touchdowns with some just amazing throws on Sunday. So we know that he has that in his bag as a potential. He can throw it around if he needs to. That system is just set up in such a way where they don't really ask him to that much. He's QB3 on the season, even though it seems like he's been knocked and
A down season.
a lot. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like he's just a steady and consistent competitor. I feel like his value is people never give him credit, never put him up there with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, even though from a fantasy perspective, he performs right up there with them. And so being able to get him there at the 110, I think there's a drop off after this. And so I think it's a pretty good value.
Yeah, and I agree. The next quarterback that I would consider is probably going to fall into the second round, knowing kind of where we're probably going. It's just like when you have the rushing floor that Jalen Hurts does, it's so safe, especially when you're talking about 4-point pass touchdown.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So with the next pick here, I think I was between this wide receiver, Malik Nabers, and the next wide receiver, your guy, CeeDee Lamb. But Malik Nabers, I think people are concerned about the injury right now, and I've gone ad nauseum on my Sunday injury podcast about how I'm not concerned at all that this is going to affect Malik Nabers beyond this season. And based on the timelines right now, guys, he's still sitting that he will probably, the highest potential is him returning back training camp. If it was just an ACL there. They did find that there was a lateral meniscus involvement, but they said it was not going to increase the timeline on his injury return to play, return to practice. Injury long term, not worried. And then as far as the situation for Malik Nabers, he is the alpha on the team. They just upgraded a quarterback while he's been hurt, and with Jackson Dart, it's been pretty magical so far in the last couple of games. I released my apology letter on Twitter X. You guys didn't see that, but he's set up for the future. He's young. He's gonna, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 22 years old, basically the same age as Emeka Egbuka. So, we're not worried long term about Malik Nabers with the injury. He's still in that top tier for me, and I think it goes back to back with another wide receiver in that tier, with CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's my pick here. I think that I might have a little bit of the hometown bias because I am a Cowboys fan, but I see Lamb right there with Chase and Jefferson as at the top, and I still have him above Puka and Nabers. I don't think anything's changed from his 2023 season where he was wide receiver 1. He was looking really good at the beginning of 2024 before Dak got hurt, and then just basically the last what is it, season and a half to 2 full seasons with Dak, he is putting up the stats as good as anybody. So if Dak Prescott is there and CeeDee Lamb if Dak Prescott is healthy and CeeDee Lamb is healthy, it's basically the same as Burrow and Chase as far as from a statistical standpoint for Lamb. So I think the ceiling is as high as anybody. I love that he seems to kind of slide down. I think keep your guys him as like wide receiver 6. People seem to kind of value him like a tier lower than the guys, and I don't really understand why, because from a production standpoint, he's right there with all of them. And so to me, like Chase went I would take Chase over Lamb, but Chase going 103 and Lamb going 112. To me, I think that the value of getting Lamb at 112 and then you turn around and pick a 201, and if it's a third round reverse, we'll have 301 versus having Chase at 103 and then 210 and 310. To me, it's like you're so far ahead having a guy in that same tier, 9 picks later.
Definitely. I think we're going to see that a couple instances in this startup mock.
Yeah.
So, actually, oddly enough, on that turnaround, I'm going to pick it at 201. Feels weird. But, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. So just like you said with CeeDee Lamb, getting a guy who is in a similar tier, but at a cheaper cost.
Yeah.
I think there is the concern with Jahmyr Gibbs that he does have David Montgomery on the same team. As you can see right now, even with a healthy Monty through the first 7 weeks, that he is at RB4 on the season.
Yeah.
And he put up a monster game this last week against Tampa Bay at 36.8 points in PPR. He had 2 touchdowns. Okay. I couldn't remember if he had 3 touchdowns that game, but he is as solid as it comes when he's he could be as explosive as Bijan. The argument we're having is just that Bijan is kind of the unequivocated RB1 on his team, and they feed him the ball like it, and they also feed the ball to Gibbs just like they do Bijan. I mean, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams had a 0 burger this week, but like they're still going to get their volume with Gibbs still ending up as a top 12 running back on the team. So it's at this point at the 201, I'll take the value there. Definitely would have loved to have Bijan at 109.
Well, we saw, so like, I think he's solidly the RB2, even with David Montgomery there. But we saw the monstrous upside that he has when he's fed a workhorse role like he had the last few weeks of last year. He actually had so many points the last thing, if you include week 18, he actually ended up ahead of Saquon Barkley. If you include week 18, of course, Barkley didn't play, but still, like the RB1 last year, when most of the year he was sharing the backfield with Montgomery and people were upset about Montgomery's usage. And it seems like I do think so far this year, Montgomery has been utilized less than in years past. And it seems like Gibbs is really taking over. It was more 60-40 before. It feels like it's more 70-30 now. I mean, maybe Montgomery's getting a lot of touches, but they're less efficient touches. It seems like he's in on the possessions where they don't score, and they score when Gibbs is in there. So you got to think that trend is going to continue. That Gibbs is going to, keep getting more and more work. But I really think that having Montgomery as a change of pace helps keep Gibbs healthy. I mean, he doesn't need to have 25 to 30 touches in order to really perform. So to me, if he's staying healthy and he's a top 5 running back, even with that workload, I don't think anybody should be too concerned about it.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, he had 17 attempts with three targets and receptions, and still ended up at 36.8 points.
Yeah. All right, at 202, I'm gonna take Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think that right now he's on an absolute tear. Some people were concerned about him switching from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, but I actually think it's been a quarterback upgrade. When he was coming into the league, a lot of people were hoping that he would, make the jump into the elite tier of receivers. And for the first couple of years, it didn't look like it was going to happen, but I think it's happening now. I mean, last year was a breakout season for him, and he's just built on it this year. I think that you've seen, there was concern about the Cooper Kupp. It's going to be in the slot, take away targets. No, JSN is the alpha on this team. JSN's only 23 years old, and he's really ascended into, he's going to be, I would argue he's probably top 3 rest of season. And, there might be more questions about, is Sam Darnold a long-term answer? So he has more QB questions than some of these other top guys if we're splitting hairs. But I think very quickly he's ascending. Just the fact that I'm taking him above Amon-Ra in this mock would have been crazy preseason. And I think that, and not that Amon-Ra's even played bad. Those two are very close. But I just think the upside with JSN and the youth combined with what we're already seeing on the field, to me, makes him very close to really being right there in the top tier, like right there in the
Yeah.
first round startup conversation if he keeps this up by the end of the year.
I think we talked about in a previous episode of like tearing down from Amon-Ra to JSN plus.
Yeah.
And if you had done that,
Can't do that
I
anymore.
think you did very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I believe he's the
I
wide
also
receiver
consider him
one
in the same.
so far this year.
He is. He is. Yeah. So he's actually my like current favorite to finish as the wide receiver one. Like he was kind of my dark horse pick between him and Drake London. And London's kind of had like this, just the rougher start to the season than JSN has had. And so, he right now he does sit as the wide receiver one on the season. I don't know that there's any slowing him down. I think the one receiver that can really challenge them is Jahmyr Chase.
Yeah. Or Puka.
And so at 203, I am going to end up taking my man, Amon-Ra St. Brown here. And funny enough that the last two picks happen to be Lions, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is another wide receiver where it's just like it's as safe as it gets. He's the wide receiver 3 on the season. He is now, this is his 5th season in the league, and he is still the alpha for Detroit. Like there was, I think, some questions coming into the season if Jameson Williams was going to start to usurp some of the targets and really start to become more of the alpha on that team. I didn't hold a lot of weight to that. I still think Jameson Williams can be productive in his career and continue to hopefully finish off this season well. But Amon-Ra is Jared Goff's target. When he knows he needs to get the first down, Amon-Ra's got as safe as hands as they get. And he is basically finished as a top 3 receiver the last 3 seasons, basically not outside of the top 12 in the last 4. So again, when you're looking for a safe floor, go with Amon-Ra as your wide receiver 1 if you're in a startup and you took quarterback in the first round. So what are your thoughts on that, Austin?
Yeah, to me, this is the kind of the end of a tier where there's no question marks, really. I think there's these 15 guys, I think, are the guys that I clearly have as my top 15. And then it's like, I don't know what I'm doing after that. I still think Amon-Ra is right there. He's kind of a, he's not a sexy pick. He's just rock solid in full PPR. He is just going to continue to put up numbers. He's just very underappreciated. And I think it's solid value to get kind of at the end of a tier. So I really like that pick there. I think
I also wanted to say, to add on too, that like I think you said, I'm in agreement that like after that 15th pick there, it gets a little murky on who goes next.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to take Justin Herbert. I think we've seen, everything I've needed to see from him this year as far as like, okay, he's back up there with the top guys. I do think there's a little bit of limiting upside just because I think the Chargers are a team that wants to run the ball first. And I think that, once they've been kind of forced into throwing the ball more because their top 2 running backs went down. But we've seen, Herbert put up 420 yards passing last week. So we've seen that when he needs to throw, he can throw. I think a key factor here for me about raising his floor is in 4 of the first 7 games, he has at least 30 rushing yards. And he has one of those games he had 60 rushing yards. So just kind of, he's not really a big runner, but when he does run, he can make some things happen, and getting that 3 to 6 points kind of added onto your score makes a huge difference to me when we're talking about this next tier of quarterbacks. And then he seems to really have. Quentin Johnson seems to have taken a big step forward. Obviously, Ladd McConkey's still there. Keenan Allen has been a great security blanket for him, and then Marion Hampton looks really good so far. Obviously, he's got the injury, but it seems like the weapons around him have been a question mark the last few years, have gotten a lot better. And so to me, I'm more comfortable taking Herbert at this kind of early to mid-second spot than I was preseason. So that's what I'm going to go with there.
Yeah, no, I love Herbert there. I think he, like you said, has just shown this season already that that he's ascended into that like second tier quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
To follow that up, Austin, I'm going to take another quarterback in this tier, and he has fallen down massively because of the injury, and I think it's rightfully so. When we're talking about a older quarterback, I mean, Burrow is 28 years old, so he's not extremely young, and he ends up going on. And this is another season that has been railed by going on IR or season-ending surgery. I mean, we don't even know if the surgery is going to end his season because technically he could come back for end of season of the playoffs, but it has been a roller coaster with Joe Burrow. I'm a fan. I've always been a Joe Burrow truther, but at the same time, he just hasn't stayed on the field like some of these other top options, which is why he does. Now he's falling to the middle of the second. I'm sure we'll start to see eyes once it's more so preseason or like the off season next year. Considering we'll see kind of how he comes back towards the end of the season and into next season. But he's got the weapons in Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. That's not a concern. That's not, and still, Chase Brown, and he has Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki is kind of his other role players on the team. He's got a good team surrounding him. But the issue is, again, the consistency of being able to stay on the field. And he is a pocket passer, right? He's not, I mean, he can scramble a little bit, but he's not a rusher as much as some of the other guys on the board ahead of him. So, as much as I just knocked Joe Burrow there at the beginning, he's still, again, when he's on, he puts up top 5 QB numbers. It's just he has to do it via passing, and in a 4-point passing touchdown league, that's going to push it down for me. Him at the 2.5, I think, is a pretty healthy spot to take him at.
Yeah, like you said, 4-point passing touchdown. So being a pocket passer does knock you a little bit, but he's the pocket passer. I mean, he's probably, unless you count Mahomes as a pocket passer, he is right there in that with Mahomes as far as like elite of the elite pocket passers. And that's what I think we talked about that a little bit last week when we were talking about Ward and Dart. If you're going to be more of in a system that makes you a pocket passer, you really have to be elite at throwing the ball, and you really have to be putting up a lot of numbers. And Joe Burrow has done that. Right. Every time he's on the field, he's one of the best passers in football. And so I think he could be a great value next season in startups, depending on how he comes back. So I like that middle of the second. Man, there are so many kind of wide receivers clumped in the tier here. So I'm just going to call my shot. I'm going to take Drake London here. He's been very up and down, but the up and down has been really more Michael Penix's struggles than it has been Drake London being inconsistent. The ceilings have been as high as anyone. I mean, he had a game with 16 targets against Buffalo with 158 yards. So I think that we've seen, I think if Michael Penix can kind of get settled down and be more consistent, London has as high a ceiling as anybody. And I think that there's other various questions about kind of receivers in this tier. And London's a guy that I like right now. And I feel good about him going forward. He was the wide receiver 5 last year. He's had, two massive games in a row, and then kind of a slow down game against San Francisco, but that whole offense didn't look quite right. He still had 10 targets. He's the featured guy on that team, and I think he's going to be fine. There's some favorable games in the schedule going forward too. So I think that right around this spot, like kind of after those top 6 or 7 wide receivers are gone, to me, London's as good a bet as any of them to be top producer.
Yeah. I think he's right in that tier for me. I was between him and 2 other wide receivers in this tier that we're kind of in right now.
Yeah.
I battled back and forth with taking a vet. You can't really consider a vet because he's in his second year. Brian Thomas versus who I'm going to take, which is the 101 of our rookie mock, and that was Emeka Egbuka. Yeah. Egbuka has put himself in this third tier of wide receivers at this point. I I think you talk about the safety of the number one wide receiver in his class. He's still, even with missing a week, the number 5 wide receiver on the season. And, as we see this Tampa Bay offense really start to change, I mean, we saw Mike Evans, unfortunately,
Yeah.
I feel bad for the dude, just went out with a almost season-ending injury. We'll see if he does come back this year, considering where the timelines are going to put it this season. But also, how the future looks for Mike Evans, how the future looks for Chris Godwin. They've got a lot of young talent on the team between Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, Tez Johnson. I mean, it's starting to shape up really interesting for Baker Mayfield in that offense. But Emeka Egbuka has shown himself to be, even with the other weapons on the field, the alpha on that team. And I think, this is a very, to take the 101 at 208 is a good spot. Like, we were basically putting another rookie that we might not even talk about. I don't even think we're going to talk about Ashton Genty in that preseason. So I like Emeka Egbuka there. I think I could have taken Brian Thomas, but to me, I like what I see in Emeka right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, myself included, had concerns about the landing spot, not long term, but at least like right away. Like, how will he be able to produce his first year or two with the logjam of receivers there? But the pathway has just cleared up and opened where I think he's in the perfect position. He is the clear number one on the team that's airing it out with a great gunslinger quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Yeah, I mean, I thought about taking Egbuka ahead of London. I mean, I think he's reached that. He's clearly top 10 at this point. And I think he's right there. The Evans injury is just another. I mean, obviously, you don't want to see that happen, but it's just another domino to fall in making him just an elite volume option on top of everything else, on top of the talent. And I think he's going to be going at least in the second round in startups, and depending on how the year finishes out, he could be a guy that goes at the 1-2 turn, depending on how it all shakes out.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take this is gonna seem like a little bit of a reach, but I think in a few weeks this won't seem as much of a reach. I'm gonna take Rashee Rice. I think that, to me, you're looking at Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, that tier of guys, Rome Odunze, Ted McMillan. To me, Rice is as good as any of them. He has the best quarterback of any of them. Just we saw a little bit of it last week. Mahomes is going to get him the ball. They're going to just find ways to get him the ball, get him touchdowns, get him targets. To me, I think the sky is the limit for Rashee Rice. Going back to those first 4 games last year, he was on a roll. He was getting targeted an insane amount, and then basically just picks up right where he left off. The injury is now behind him. The suspension is now behind him. The legal problems hopefully are done for good. He is on probation, so it's something to keep an eye on. But assuming he can keep things straight, to me, I think that he is established himself as in the conversation for back into the top 10, and I just rather have him than Brian Thomas or Nico Collins right now. I think it's just the quarterback play is so much better. The volume is better. The offense is better. The coaching is better. And I think his talent is right up there with them. So that's my justification for it.
I love that, Austin. I'm not even going to fight you on that because you know how much I love Rashee Rice. Funny enough that we were talking about it a while ago, but at the time I had slightly overpaid for Rashee Rice. Pre-suspension, 2 firsts for Rashee Rice. And of course we saw that value start to come around. And then eventually, people were again paying now 2 firsts for Rashee Rice because he like you said, he's got it all behind him. The injury he's shown that he is healthy when he came back last week, and the suspension's behind him. So I agreed even so that I would rather take him over Brian Thomas. It's not consensus, or the consensus has it much further. but that's not what's putting points on the board. And Rashee looked like the wide receiver one of his team. And, to me, I think he can produce as a top 5 wide receiver when he's on. Dynasty wise, I would take all of these guys ahead of him, but he can put points on your lineup.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, and we kind of did mention it was 0.5 tight end premium. And honestly, I think this just kind of lands with where we're at. You and I are not big into reaching on tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And right now with the whole situation with Bowers, the injury was concerning. But I think a lot of it had to do with him not wanting to rest. That's been something I've kind of been talking about for weeks now. That he had the bone bruise and the PCL sprain that he just was not. He was honestly going against medical advisement based off of reports that were coming out that the team docs had basically advised that he should sit out some weeks, and they eventually did, determined to take time and let him heal up. I think that was the best thing for him. But to get the tight end 1 at 209 in tight end premium, I think that's right where I want him. I'm not a big on taking tight ends in the first round. I think quarterbacks, as we've talked about, quarterbacks, wide receivers are a much safer option. And then, of course, Bijan being kind of that dark horse, not the odd man out when it comes to, he's a different position, but such a safe asset. But Bowers here at the 2.9, I think that's a good option in 0.5 tight end premium. When he comes back, he is going to still dominate for your team. It'll be interesting to see how some of the other tight ends around him, including Tyler Warren, who is the current tight end 1 on the season, kind of fall in that. And then there's also another tight end in Trey McBride, who we may or may not talk about in this mock.
Yeah, I gotta keep giving him love because Jake Ferguson is still the tight end 1 on the season, but Taylor Warren's getting very close. But yeah,
Yes.
But to me, I've talked about this before. In 0.75 or full tight end premium, I'm fine with taking tight ends fairly early. But the 0.5 premium doesn't make enough, I think, to me to justify paying those top end prices for tight ends, because there's some higher volume guys you can get in the middle rounds. We talked about that on other strategy episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even more so early in the season, we've seen even these guys that seem like have like these insulated protection, like Brock Bowers. It's like, man, maybe they're not quite as far ahead of everyone else's position as we thought. Now, obviously, the injury plays a role, but I just think I probably at this point with this format wouldn't take a tight end in the first 2 rounds. But I think Bowers and McBride to me would be top of the third, and they're there together. And so I think at this point, especially if you're just talking about where his ADP will be, he's going to be in the middle of the second, assuming he comes back healthy and looks good. So it's actually probably a pretty good value at 209. I'm going to go ahead and take Caleb Williams here. I know that he's keeps getting knocked. Some people aren't super pleased with his play, but his team's playing a lot better. He continues to have a good rushing floor. He's to me, he's here to stay, and I think that he's as good a bet as anyone outside of those top 4 or 5 quarterbacks to make it a step to be up there with the elites in these next couple of years. He's got good coaching staff behind him. Ben Johnson seems to be helping him a lot. Rome Odunze's taken some steps forward as an elite number 1 for him. They look like they potentially, it's early, they have time to fall apart, but they look like a potential playoff team if they keep playing the way they're playing. So I like Caleb. I think that is about where he was going preseason. I don't think much has changed. I think right here at the end of the second is probably, the good spot for him.
Yeah. So, Caleb Williams, barring 2 games, he was a QB. He's a QB1 on season. Right now at QB 14, but he had a 5-point game last week, and 2 weeks before that he had a 12-point game. But outside of that, he's averaged around just over 20 points a game. So I like that pick there at the 210. I went ahead and decided to pick Brian Thomas at the 211. It's a fall off. I was kind of mentioning earlier that Brian Thomas has opened the season in just such a funky way with the production, the usage, and then people were saying he was scared to take hits because they were watching him switch the ball from one hand to the other, and so they were kind of confirming this wrist injury that Liam Cohen was talking about in an interview. I'm not long term like worried about Brian Thomas if you can get him at the end of the second like this. I think when he is back to full health and they can figure out whatever is they're having on the offense, like I think Liam Cohen is working his way through what this whole offensive situation is. But he is wide receiver 1 to me over Travis Hunter, even if it's a wide receiver 1A, 1B. But I think the fall off has happened so much because of some of this weird stuff that's happened at the beginning of the season. Long-term wise, I think this is still a great buying opportunity for Brian Thomas. Just think that, I probably wouldn't want to exceed anywhere north of like 2 firsts, basically what I'd want to try and get him for right now. If I'm doing anything more than that, that's probably the edge of market value. And I think 2 firsts is probably pretty comfortable with that. But we talked about how we'd take Rashee Rice over him in this situation. It's just the situation is a little bit murkier, especially with like the poor play from Trevor Lawrence and Travis Hunter kind of starting to take some of those reps.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Brian Thomas is probably a good value there at that point. There's a lot of guys I could pick here at 212. I still like Nico Collins. I've always been high on him. The Houston offense just seems so out of sync. I don't think I can take him here. Ashton Genty, I think, is still fine. I think anybody that is too alarmed by his early season start, I think, had too high of expectations for a rookie season on a really bad team. But I'm gonna take Bo Nix here. He had one of the best quarters of football I've ever seen. In that fourth quarter, the Broncos scored 33 points. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. Showed us kind of the ceiling that he has. He had some not so good games. Obviously that Jets game in London, that no one really played well on either team. But Nix has been very solid. I think that you and I were talking before the show. You were saying like, is Baker potentially in consideration for back end of the second at this point? And I think that's not crazy. I think that's in the realm of your possibilities here. I think he's probably an early 3rd round pick at this point. So he's somebody I consider here, but I like Nix.
I had Nix ahead of Baker in my mock. I think I had Nix at like 210 or something like that. But yeah.
So I mean, I think that it's just the way things fell. I think it's the pick here. Obviously, there's a lot of different options. You could go Trey McBride. You could go, like we talked about Genty. Roma Dunze is probably in play. So there's a lot of different ways you could go, but I'm gonna stick with a quarterback here and close out the mock with Bo Nix. I like what I've seen from him so far this year. A lot more of the same as we saw last year. Seems to be solidifying himself as a back end top 10, back end QB1 going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, even like if we played this in a real mock, you ended up with, we ended up with Josh Allen and Bo Nix as QB1 and QB2 of a team, and that's like feeling really good about your team right there. Of course, you want to fill in with some other positions, but yeah, I think that's right there, kind of where my 2 rounds would be. Obviously, you can sneak some names up in there. I think even for myself, like I don't love Brian Thomas at the 211, but I think it's just that's the value right now. I think that's where it's falling. But Austin, what were your thoughts on overall in the draft, and where did things kind of fall for you?
I think it's interesting. I think there's some good quarterback values if you don't take them early, but I do think there is kind of that top tier that you can kind of get advantage by taking them. There's a lot of receivers I think that are elite, and there's not as many running backs, which makes me really think that the value on Bijan and Gibbs is really good because there, we talked about there's a whole group of guys. There's Nico Collins, there's Roma Dunze that didn't even get picked. Tedder McMillan, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. So there's a lot of guys you can still get even if you take a running back early. For instance, like if you look at team 8, Bijan Robinson and Joe Burrow to start off the draft, you have an elite QB1, you have an advantage at a position in Bijan Robinson, and there'll still be wide receivers that he can fill out. So I think it's like any strategy, you kind of just have to balance out, like, okay, where am I getting an edge over everyone else? And then once I do that, what do I need to come back with to balance out the team? But this is fun. I'm sure this will change a bunch, between now and the end of the year, but we've already seen a lot of movement in 7 weeks, and it'll be fun to keep tracking.
Especially like the big rises for Drake May, JSN, Egbuka, and Rice here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure always to be on with you and be able to share our Oh, geez, changed my name again. Oh gosh. All right, guys. Well, it's currently 6:38 in the morning here. We are gonna sign off. I am Dynasty Big Mac FF. Don't believe the name up there. With Austin MJ here. We're here with the Dynasty Gambit. Please reach out to us if you want to follow us on our socials. Of course, we've got the free Discord running, and we'll be running other mocks like this later throughout the season. And possibly another trade show, another roster review, and kind of where we're sitting at. But we've got a lot to do the rest of the 11 weeks of the season. Please feel free to reach out to us and get connected with us. So definitely like, subscribe onto the channel, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Yep. See you guys.